Now, is it possible to retire early with just $150,000? If you ask most financial planners about retirement, they're going to tell you that you must invest 20% of your salary and live on rice and baked beans until you actually retire. But the counter argument is, if you ask any older person on their deathbed, they'll tell you that you should enjoy life while you are young. And this causes a friction point because that enjoyment while you're young usually has a price tag. So in this video, I want to answer the question: can you actually retire on just 150 grand? Meaning that in your younger years, you can actually enjoy more of your money. Now, the retirement age in the United States currently is 66 years old, but I actually want to retire earlier than this, and I want to see if I can do it on as little money as possible. So if we run the numbers, let's say you're currently 62 years old and you're ready to retire. 62 is an important number because it's also the youngest you can actually start to receive your social security check. Let's assume that you are in your last year of work and you currently earn 64,000 US dollars, which is the national average, and that you live in California. All you have to your name is a simple 150 grand invested into a tax efficient Roth IRA, nothing too sexy and nothing to write home about. When it comes to calculating how much you need for retirement, we need to look at your expenses. And this amount will vary drastically on whether you are single or if you're married. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a single person's annual expenses today is about 48 grand, where a married couple is 76 grand. Many would argue that in retirement you need less money, but I'm actually in a very different camp, because if you want to enjoy retirement, you're probably gonna need even more money because of these circles. Now, to understand these circles, it's dead simple. Right now, most people's days break in to 8-hour slots. You have 8 hours, 8 hours, and 8 hours. Now, you might have 8 hours of work, you'll have 8 hours of sleep, and you'll have 8 hours of leisure. And the simplest way to do this is, where would you spend most of your money? And of course, it's going to be in this section here, the leisure, because when you're at work, you're hopefully earning, and if you can spend money in your sleep, you have a serious problem. Now, when you come to retire, you have obviously the same amount of time, but now you only have 8 hours of sleep, but you actually have 16 hours of leisure time where you can potentially spend your money. So when people tell me that you need less money in retirement, I always ask myself, are you planning on doing a lot less? Because my retirement means sailing around the world and traveling to places I've never been, which means I'm probably gonna need a lot more money than I currently have. But anyway, coming back to it, let's keep with the current figures the BLS statistics say, and let's assume you are gonna live on less, with 80% of the national average. Let's also assume you are like 46.4% of American adults who are actually single. That means that your annual expenses will come in at about $38,400. Now, of course, in this calculation, we are going to include Social Security benefits because we're entitled to it, and the whole point is to try and retire at 62 with just a little amount of money. We're going to assume that we also get a rate of return on our investment of 6% every single year. So this money is actually working for us. Now, that 6% is below the market average over a long period of time, I know, but we want to be less aggressive with our own retirement savings in case a big crash comes. Now, with this current plan, Social Security income, and expense expectations, we have enough money to last us into our 90s. And if we live longer than that, we will have to just lower our expenses and live on Social Security. But there's a big problem with this calculation, something we haven't accounted for, which makes life a lot more expensive, and that is inflation. If we simply add a 3% average inflation, which I think is sensible over a long period of time, we can see that this paints a very different picture. In fact, our calculator is basically saying we need about $1 million and we are completely fucked. When you add inflation into your retirement calculation, it quickly kills off our pitiful 150 grand. So how can we make this work for us? us? Well, there's actually a few things we can do to get this amount of money to actually work for us. The first logical step would be to, unfortunately, retire a little bit later. If we aim to retire at 67 and have this 150 grand generate a 6% return for these amount of years and delay our social security as well until 67, it paints a much nicer picture. But it's still not enough because we're going to run out of retirement savings before we actually die. So here's the trick on how to make it work. If you were initially planning to retire at 62 with 150 grand and then decide to retire at 67, you can actually start to practice your future expenses. So from the age of 62 to 67, you're gonna live on that $38,400 expenses we talked about earlier. This would then free up 24 grand every single year, which you can invest into your retirement pot. That is 2 grand every single month. And what this does to your retirement is literally insane. If you did this methodology, not only will you have enough to achieve a decent form of retirement, your plan will fund you up until 95 and you'll even have a bit of surplus after. Now that said, I do want to say that retirement and calculating for it is extremely difficult because every individual is very, very different. But you can actually make 150 grand work, especially if you consider these other options that are available to you, because you can find a way to live a beach retirement lifestyle with even just 100 grand in your Roth IRA. And I talk about these options in this video here, so if you're looking for a beach retirement lifestyle on a low income, go check it out.